feel like a dog with a shock collar on. I wonder how far my limit is. Let's go to the Lord with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for the music that we've just heard, Lord, and we thank you for all that you've given to us. Lord, we thank you so much for our fathers, Lord, because without them, we wouldn't be here then. Lord, we just pray that you give me the word that you want these people here to hear or that they need this morning, Lord, and just let me not mess it all up, because I know I'm pretty good at that. Just be with me, Lord, and just let me deliver your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I've had several things that happened this week. Y'all know I try to put devotions on Facebook, and I'm a wondering, so don't get surprised if I step down and walk out here to y'all. Like I say, I don't know how far my limit is. But last Sunday, I wanted to put a devotion on Facebook. And we went into Winn-Dixie, and I didn't have my phone. I left it in the truck, and I seen something that I wanted to take a picture of because I'd been seeing it the week before all over the hospitals and everywhere I went. And I didn't get a picture of it. And then there's been several things this week that has tied right into what God has given me. Wednesday afternoon, Rose was going to Winn-Dixie. I said, take me a picture of that thing that I want that picture of. And when she got home, I said, did you get it? And she's like, no, I didn't get it. She said it was pouring down rain, and I was fumbling with my umbrella trying to get all the groceries ready and everything else, and I didn't get your picture. I'm like, oh, man. And then it was interesting. Friday at work, we had to go to work over at Cancer Genetics there on the campus, just down from Shands. And up on the 5th floor, there was a doorway, and there's a line right across it. And you got to put a booty on and step over the line and stand on one leg and put the other booty on. Your buckets and your ladders all have to be sprayed down. Anything that touches the floor. And the reason behind this was because they didn't want the rats up there to catch anything that you brought in. So, you know, and the picture I want to do at Winn-Dixie was they got a big old jug of this hand sanitizer, and they got the sanitizing wipes in there. And of course, y'all, how many of y'all have seen them all over the hospitals? I mean, they're everywhere you turn around nowadays. I mean, we're too afraid to get dirty. And I wasn't even clean enough Friday to go in with a bunch of rats. I mean, and to me, that's the nastiest thing there is. But I got to thinking, and I had to tie this in somehow with Father's Day, because today is Father's Day. And I got to thinking about my dad, who's been passed away for 20 years, June the 3rd. He's been passed away. But Daddy, he was a farmer and a cattleman. And his old hands was calloused, and I mean, mine ain't even close to what his was. And they was stained with grease and dirt. And I mean, he was just a hard-working man. In the little country church that we went into, almost everybody in there was either cowboys or farmers or cattlemen. I mean, Mr. Emory Mills and Mr. Bobby, Herbert Mills, I mean, all of them was out there. And it was all, you know, just like one big family, and everybody knew what type of person he was. But I called a cowboy buddy of mine, and I said, I got to use you in my sermon this morning. He said, well, I feel honored if you would. But it was funny, back in the late 70s and the early 80s, we sat in the back left-hand corner of the church. And this family sat up kind of over on the right-hand side toward the back of the church. Mr. Mike Joyner. Now, Mr. Mike Joyner, he's a card. Some of y'all know him. But now, back in the day, see, he was an undercover agent for the DEA. And he had long hair back when it wasn't cool. He had an earring in his ear. He had a gold tooth. And the funniest thing I remember was whenever he'd come in and sit down, we'd get these visitors that come in. And of course, you know, as a visitor, they don't want to go any farther than they have to when they come in the back of the church. They find an empty seat. And it was amazing because they'd sit down there, and the whole time, I don't even think they heard a word the preacher said, because the whole time they were sitting there staring at Mr. Mike. But don't we do the same thing? You know, my daddy, his hands was all calloused and everything. I grew up in a house, and it was me and Mom and Dad, my brother and my grandma that lived with us, and we had one bathroom and we had to share. And Daddy, he'd take a shower. Daddy was a pretty big old fella. Some of y'all remember Daddy, and some of y'all don't, but he was a pretty big old fella. And he would cut the fool, and I don't know where I got it from, but he'd go in there on Sunday morning, and just before it was time to go, he'd put that stink water on. How many of y'all remember Aquavella? That was Daddy, Aquavella. And then followed by Grandma's Aquanet hairspray. And the bathroom, man, it stayed in my nose the whole time we was at church, you know. But too bad, you know, when you stop and thinking what's happened is if we look around, all our little rural churches, people had moved in. And they wasn't like us. They were different. But after a while, it almost seemed like the cattlemen, the cowboys, and the farmers, they started becoming the outcast. And this church here is one of the results of all of that that's happened. Because they don't feel, them type of people do not feel comfortable going into a traditional church. And the traditional church don't feel comfortable seeing them in there. Especially if they come in straight from work. If you have your Bibles this morning, let's turn to Luke chapter 18.
You have your Bible? Huh?
Luke chapter 18. Beginning with the 9th verse. And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. And Jesus said that 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee, and the other was a publican. And the Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I'm not as other men, extortionaries, unjust, adulterers, or even this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, will not lift up so much as his eyes into heaven. But he smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. When we look around, aren't we bad about that? Don't we try to find fault with people? You know, it's amazing, like I said, you know, years ago when I was growing up, there wasn't no such thing as hand sanitizer. We run around in the fields. We played baseball with cow manure piles. I mean, we just stayed in it. You know, we wasn't afraid to get dirty. But it seems that nowadays, that a lot of Christians and a lot of churches are afraid to even get dirty. But when we stop about and think about what Christ did, who was he seen with? The outcast, the lepers, all the ones that was considered unclean. Can you imagine what would happen, Mickey? I didn't get your permission, but I'm going to use you anyhow. Can you imagine what would happen if Mr. Mickey went to work at Whitehurst penning cows one day, and he rode all day and they worked cows, and he went up to First Baptist in Gainesville or in Ocala, and he walked in there, and he's wet from sweat, he's wet from the rain, he's got manure stains on his breeches, and he's got cow poop on his boots. I guarantee the majority of people would look at him like he was something strange. But that's what we do. A lot of times, you know, and I'm going to use this phrase because y'all think it and y'all say it, so I'm going to say it too. A lot of times, we get so good up on ourselves that we think our poop doesn't stink. How many times have we seen people like that? That they think their poop doesn't stink? Do y'all like being around people like that? No. Christ wasn't like that, was he? Christ was not like that. See, Jesus came to save all. Jesus was seen with the outcast and the unclean. And why was he like this? I mean, why did he do it? To give us an example. He loved them and he came to save them. And the term Christian means what? To be Christ-like. We shouldn't be afraid to get our hands dirty, to go to the lost, no matter where they're at, no matter what kind of trouble they've been in or anything else, to go to the lost and try to tell them about Jesus. Amen. Let's look in John chapter 8. John chapter 8. Beginning with the first verse. And Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple. And all the people came unto him, and he sat down and he taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? And they said this, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground as if though he had not heard him. And so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted in their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning from the eldest even unto the youngest, or the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And when Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. How many times are we like to point fingers at somebody? You know, so and so. Is that what Christ did here in this example? No. He was worried about this right here, her heart, wasn't he? And that's what we should be worried about. It's not about what somebody wears. There's nothing in this Bible that says I got to be up here in a three-piece suit. And I wore my old jeans and my shirt untucked this morning for a reason. This right here is a church for the unchurched. That's what all of them are supposed to be. But a lot of times we lose that vision of what Christ set for an example for us. Jesus came to save all. How many of you know John 3:16? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. But what about John 3:17? Where's Maritza at?
Marissa's over
Come up here, Maritza.
Hope he knows it's not
Maritza.
Marissa.
I know. I'm looking for a microphone.
She don't need one.
That's so mean.
John 3:17 says what?
For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through them might be saved. Amen.
Thank you. God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. That was Christ. And as Christians, we're supposed to be like Christ. We're not afraid to get our hands dirty. Or we shouldn't be afraid to get our hands dirty. Don't ever get to a place in your Christianity that you think your sin is less than anyone else's. You know, a lot of times we categorize sin. And we say, well, that person there, he's worse than I am. But in God's eyes, sin is sin. There's no category. And what does the Bible say about all of us in sin? It says that we're all sinners. We're all sinners, and we have fallen short of His glory. God sees sin as sin. There's no degrees of sin. And look at verse 11 again. The woman said, "No man, Lord." And Jesus said unto her, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." That's one of the biggest weaknesses that we have as people. We look at other people and we try to judge, don't we? They're not fit to do this, or they're not fit to even be here because they're sinners. Guess what? We're all sinners. We're all sinners. We shouldn't be like that. Christ wasn't like that, was he? You know, Christ came to save and not to condemn, but it's sad that too many today want to condemn people and not save them. We see somebody that's got a bunch of problems going on in their lives, and they don't know which way to turn. And being a Christian, we should go to them, and we should try to tell them about Christ and try to help them. But instead, we don't want to get our hands dirty. We just let them be, don't we? How many times have we done that? I've done it. I'm going to be honest. But should we? No, sir. No, ma'am. We worry too much about being clean and staying clean nowadays, in my opinion. Like I said, you know, it was funny. Of all the events that took place today, because I was wanting to do this devotion on Facebook, and then Thursday night, I'd been disappointed all week because I hadn't had the picture, because I'm a visual type of person and like to put a picture with a message. And I didn't have a picture of that hand sanitizer, so I hadn't got it. And then we were standing around here, and Billy come by, and he knew what I was working on and stuff, and he's like, "You're preaching Sunday." And I just thought he was being joking. You know how Billy is. And he went on, and about 2 minutes later, I said, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm serious. I got work." I said, "Okay." I said, "I got something." And then Friday, I got to thinking, like I said, when we went up there and had to go in there and we had to clean ourselves up good enough to be in amongst the rats. That's a life lesson right there. That's a life lesson. And another thing about that same day is when we come outside, we had our trucks parked way out there up against the fence with the pipe threader and everything, and it was pouring down rain. And the only way we could get from the building to our trucks was to go through all that rain. So I had to basically, that truck I consider home during the week for 8 hours a day. I had to get wet. I had to get clean in order to get to my truck. In order to go home, I had to be clean. And isn't that what Christ done? How many times did He heal those that were sick? The lepers, the ones that were blind, the ones that were crippled. And He done the same thing in my life. And I know a lot of y'all, He's done the same thing in your lives. He's turned us around. And then people standing out there, we're not no better. Our poop stinks just as much as theirs does. And if we think that we're too good to go out there and tell them about Christ, somebody that can turn their lives around, we're wrong. We're wrong. Don't ever think that we're better than anybody else. God didn't come, or Christ didn't come just to save a certain group of people. He came to save everyone. And we have to remember that. We can't be afraid to get our hands dirty. Let's close with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank You for this day. Lord, we thank You for all the blessings that You've given us, especially for Your Son, who You so willingly gave to us so that we might be saved. and for Christ for willingly giving His life and His blood that we can be cleansed and have eternal life. Lord, we pray that in our lives as Christians, that we don't judge other people, that we don't condemn, but instead, your Son, before He left, told us to go and tell the world about Him. And as Christians, that's what we're supposed to do. And that's even to somebody that we don't even think's worthy enough to know Him. But that's our opinion and not yours. And we have to realize that. Lord, help us to reach out to those who are lost, no matter if they're on horseback, no matter if they're living in a cardboard box in the alley. They're all your children. And it's our job as your children to tell them about Christ. Lord, we just pray that you go with us the rest of this day. Be with the fathers, Lord, and the families. Just watch over, Lord. Help us to be Christians that other people can see Christ in, no matter where we're at or no matter what we're doing. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.